Tonight we are going to hear about the story of a quiet night in Alexandria, when you serve as the Queen's reader and scribe within the Bruchaian's cool stone rooms, trimming oil lamps and listening to the gentle drip of the water clock as the eastern harbour breathes beyond the shutters. A night of papyrus under your hands and reed pens dressed to a neat chisel, of diluted mariotic wine and figs set aside, of soft footfalls in colonnades and wax warmed for the royal signet, until Cleopatra herself steps into the lamplight to hear the letters spoken, to answer in a voice as even as the sea, while you balance the ledger before dawn and send the sealed replies out across river, road, and tide. Evening cool slips along the palace corridors and into the small room where you will spend the night. It meets the warmth left in the stone, and the two make a slow accord, a kind of breath the room learns and then keeps. You touch a clay lamp with your thumb and forefinger and coax its wick until the flame steadies, a thin, even whisper. One lamp becomes three, set so their circles of light overlap and smooth each other's edges. Shadows retreat to the corners and wait there without complaint. On the shelf, the clepsydra begins its counting. Water passes from copper to clay with a mild throat, bead by bead, not scolding time, but offering it in small, agreeable sips. The smell of gum arabic lifts from the ink saucer, faintly sweet, like bark touched by sun. A brazier low in its pan holds charcoal at the point where heat doesn't boast. You place your hands to it and take only what warmth it is willing to give. Papyrus rolls nest beneath a flat stone to keep their manners. Reeds soak in a jar, their ends softening for the work. You pinch one out and test the nib on a potsherd, the line thin and true. Beyond the shutter, the harbour breathes against the quay. The Pharaoh's fire makes a steady thought in the dark, more mind than blaze at this distance. Your night's intention is unshowy and exact. Reconcile the tallies and phrase the replies so the first trays can leave with the couriers at dawn. You place the ledger where your hands fall naturally and loosen the tie on the first packet. The fibres rasp softly under your finger. The room is ready to be the size of the work. The work is ready to be no larger than your breath. Chapter 1. The Discipline of Ink. You ease into the chair that remembers you. The cedar rail that keeps unruly scrolls from sliding is polished by your sleeves into a dark, quiet gleam. When you unroll the first letter, Cyprus, its scribe's hand steps out with a considered gait. Grain shipments, copper drafts, stipends to temples, all placed where the eye will not stumble. You weight the curl with a smooth basalt pebble and let the papyrus relax under your palm. Ink first, you lift the saucer and swirl the carbon and gum mixture until it loosens its shoulders. The scent is low and friendly. With the knife you dress the reed, shaving slivers from the nib until the chisel edge answers light with a dark, obedient stroke. The first line goes down, ruled not by pride but by habit. 2 columns for measures, 1 for coin, a margin for red rubric that will usher the gaze like a steward at a door. The papyrus receives the ink like a listener who already trusts you, accepting without rush, showing a faint sheen that loses itself as it dries. You mark headings in red. The thin colour is quiet as a blush, not a shout. It gives a breath between matters so the mind does not knot itself. Oil lamps whisper. You trim a wick with a bronze pick and set the soot aside to cool. The brazier's heat draws a line along your wrists. You do not hurry the line does not hurry you. The scribe from Salamis writes of copper and of priests who must be paid what they were promised when the moon was new. He notes a shortfall that worries him like a pebble in the shoe. You do not weigh his concern now. Your work is to place his words in the bowl of order and make it ready for the Queen's hand. You take the measure of his figures, add what wants adding, spread a cloth of red between sections so each will hold its shape. A eunuch's footfall draws and fades outside, the pace even as a reed laid among reeds. His key ring keeps a soft conversation with his belt. You think of him as part of the room's boundary, a line beyond which no other noise will trespass. The clepsydra drops its glassless beads. You rise and open the lattice to the width of a palm. The night air moves like water poured carefully from one jar into another. The sea is close, felt more than seen. Tar and rope lend the darkness a kind of kindly heaviness. A faint wing edge of smoke lifts from the Pharaoh's fire and drifts, a pale vein in the sky. The Heptastadion causeway lies there as a seam binding one harbour to the other, and this city to itself. Back at the desk, you set your elbow to the wood and take up the Delta packet. The papyrus wears a smear of old river across one corner. Your thumb comes away clean. Grain figures speak in their slow, calm language. Measures in bins, measures on boats, measures promised to temple singers whose work greases the hinge between sun and prayer. In the margin, a scribe excuses his tardy sum with a note about a fevered child. You read it as you would a knot in a rope and do not cut it. It will belong to the Queen to decide how soft the rope must be. You mix a fresh mouth of black, just a breath of water, then turn to the ledger. The columns admit your strokes as a field accepts rain. You do not insist on elegance, only clarity. Copper down this bank, grain down the other, drachmae in the centre, a narrow path between them. When you must think, you let your hand rest and listen to the room think with you. Lamp, drip, distant surf and embers shy crackle. The brazier wants tending. You stoop and lift a coal to make space for another breath of air to wander through. The smell is not smoke, but warmth made into scent. You warm your palms, then your fingertips, which have cooled while pinching the reed. Your tunic's linen moves on your skin with the light scrape of fresh-washed cloth. The wool cloak hangs waiting for the hour when the sea will remember the desert and borrow its chill. Food is there to draw the edge of hunger back. Figs parted to show their many small stars. A dish of dates, sticky with their own dark sweetness. A slab of barley bread glossed with honey you can see and smell before you taste. You pour Mariotic wine into a cup and then pour water into the wine until the drink becomes gentle and thin. It carries herb and sun as a rumour, not a tale. You do not give your tongue more work than your pen gives your hand. You write the first reply in the style the Queen prefers, spare, precise, with breadth, where kindness needs somewhere to sit. To the steward at Salamis, entrusted with copper and temple stipends, greeting from the Queen. Your letters stand with their backs straight, no swagger. When the phrase that carries the sense arrives, you make room around it so it can be found again at a glance. You leave blank where the Queen will place the measure of time, the year of her reign, because that is her habit and her right. Sealing will wait. Still, you lay out the tools like a cook setting a board for the meal he will prepare. Wax cakes in a small clay box, 2 discs of fine clay resting under a damp cover, the signet wrapped in linen. You do not uncover the signet yet. Its place in the night is after the words. You honour that order and feel your mind deepen its quiet for it. A boy from the kitchens blinks in the doorway, bare feet blackened by stone, a jug of hot water in his hands held as if it were a warm animal. You take it from him and set it beside the ink. Steam makes a slim ghost that lingers near the lamps before slipping into the shadowed corners. "Bread later," he whispers. "Later," you agree, soft as sand. The second reply grows out of the figures like a reed grows from water, proper to what it rises from. You do not waste words making yourself heard. The papyrus hears and keeps when you pause. You cap the ink with a small flat stone and listen to the habit of the room resume. The ledger shows its health now. A column that had been sullen at the start has come into line. You add a red border and look at it the way you look at a sleeping child when the fever tips away at last. You stand and let your back remember what standing is for. The mosaic cool through your soles feels like a second, kinder ground. Fish and leaves set in sand and locked in lime move nowhere beneath you and never complain. The garden beyond the lattice holds myrtle in clipped walls and a basin that has dark all the way to its rim. Somewhere past it, a night bird makes a small note and then seems to sleep inside the note. The room holds you for the rest you give it, and then takes you back, the way water does when you lower your hand in and lift it out again. You close the first packet with a temporary tie. Red gleams under oil light, black has set to a gentle flatness, and the chords lie as if designed to be there. The clepsydra tells you nothing you do not already know. That patient work fills time the way a river fills a bed made for it. You begin the next letter with the calm of someone who has learned that breath is measure enough. A steward slips his head round the frame, eyes asking before his mouth dares. "A brazier in the next room," he suggests, hardly a voice at all. "Leave it at half," you answer, and his nod makes sound only to the air. He is linen and bronze and practised care. You look at the key ring at his waist and think of all the locks he opens and closes in a day, and of how none of their mouths will ever be as patient as this room's. Now the cypress reply waits for the queen's sense to enter it. The delta reply waits with its knot. Additional tallies present themselves and then obey the order your ledger extends to them. Tolls collected on the river when barge is more. Coin in bronze to be paid to men of the canal works. A short weight of rope to be accounted for. You add what lines must be added and leave what space must not be filled. Outside the lattice, the harbour answers the night with its own breath and keeps answering it. You have not spoken more than a dozen words and your voice feels saved rather than hoarded. You run your thumb and forefinger along the reed and feel the nib's readiness. There is nothing here to rush. The lamps do not. The water does not. The sea does not. You let those teachers be your teachers until the step you have been waiting for comes along the corridor, soft leather on stone and not much else, and you know that the next portion of the night will be for reading aloud. Chapter 2. A Queen Who Listens. The corridor holds its own cool, a current that moves from court to court under a simple law. You carry a small lamp on a tray and 3 letters balanced as if they were loaves, warm from an oven. Columns keep their distance respectfully. Statues in the half-light stand in their habits and do not imagine a different life. In a service niche, a jug of water hangs its lip over a bowl. You tip it to rinse a cup and set the cup where the queen will reach if she wishes. Rosemary grows in a low trough. You brush its needles and carry the green comfort with you a little way. At the end of the portico, a view opens, night's soft theatre. The Pharaoh's holds a higher dark within the dark. At its crown, the fire shows itself like thought more than flame, a thing that does not need to prove it is there. Beyond the heptastadion, the second harbour presses its cheek to the wind. Small vessels mark themselves with sparks of light that lift and fall as if breathing. You stand in that mild sight until your task sits up inside you again and asks for your hands. Back in the room, you set 2 cups, one for the queen, one for you. The wine from Mariotis becomes itself only when water speaks to it. Dates and figs and barley bread make a quiet little landscape on the plate. You adjust a lamp so it will not complain with smoke when watched. Then you wait without fretting, and the wait becomes part of the work, and the work makes the room a vessel that can hold her when she comes. She comes not as noise but as relief. The air behind her steps is held in place by a eunuch at the door, a woman to her left, a woman to her right. Her linen is fine and not busy. The gold that speaks of her office is modest in metal and large in meaning. The diadem sits like a line placed by a sure hand. You incline, you feel your chest ease when she returns the courtesy with an ease that allows you to have a chest again. She sits without turning the room into a throne room. Read, she says, a thread of cotton drawn through cloth, and you lift the first roll. Cypress. You open it, and let the voice you've saved for this work find its easy height. You do not make a song of it. You do not flatten it. Figures and places and measures pass into the room. You watch her eyes so your pace can follow their pace. She listens as someone trained to hear what is meant does, not hunting for error, not hungry for surprise, but welcoming the shape of a thing as it shows itself. When you finish, she cradles a cup in her hand and does not drink yet. Hold the copper price for a month, she says very quietly, as if telling the fire what to do. The steward will know how to honour the temple stipends without noise. Add a line to make that clear. You nod, and your pen will later find the place where that line will take its place without jostling others. The second roll breathes of river and grain, of bins and bands and hands. You read as before, and when the small apology about a sick child arrives in your mouth, you carry it gently, not as a stone, but as a leaf that must not tear. She sets the cup down and smooths a thumb along the desk as if feeling for a familiar ridge. Coin for the father from the palace stipend, she says, the words hardly rising, and tell the overseer to send word if the next flood threatens the lower fields. Let him name what he means by threaten. We will not fight shadows, your pen will be exact. You allow yourself one slow breath that tastes of myrrh on the air near her, and of ink near you. Between letters she accepts a date, and the sugar opens on the tongue, and then goes where food goes when a body that must stay awake asks for blessing without sleepiness. You drink a little wine and more water and find your voice is as clear as the lamp flame pooled in the saucer's lip. The women behind her adjust what wants adjusting and do not add anything more than the safety that small adjustments bring. The third roll speaks of canal banks and the price of rope, and of bronze coin counted out under a lamplight, much like this one in a building that will never be as quiet as this room is. She lets the picture form and does not make a face at it. Agree the wages, she says, turning a ring that is nothing like a crown and everything like trust. And if rope rises, allow a small measure for movement. Give the overseer the measure, he must not carry a bag without a scale. Your red ink will mark that measure so a sleepy steward will not miss it in the first hour after dawn. This is how she is with you. Not a symbol you must read, not a storm you must survive, but a mind that likes the company of a careful page. She will press the signet later with the calm thumb that knows wax wants a second after the first impression. Now she nods when you catch a figure, with your breath before it can run away with the column. Now she looks at your headings as if they are lines in air, and the lamp smoke moves toward the shutter as if it wants to leave, and then decides, it will stay. The room grows well together. Your chair, the desk, her listening, the boy's bare feet earlier. The couriers sleeping upright outside like trees that have learned to sit. The brazier gives up a new seam of heat and then is shy again. You lay the letters you have read in a fresh place near the wax box, the way loaves are set to cool where hands will not bruise them. She stands in a manner that does not change the air, only the shape at its centre. Send for me when the seals cool, she says, eyes moving to the signet's linen wrap, and away. At dawn I will add mine. She reaches for the door, and the door is ready to be reached for, and the corridor gathers her in without announcing her to itself. You sit a moment after she goes, because the body likes to be told that something has happened and has happened in a good way. You look at the cedar's grain under your hand and think how many decisions have passed across this surface and then gone out into the city as deeds. You turn the cup and drink the rest of the water. The lamps approve and do not flicker. When you write now, it feels as if the papyrus and the reed and the ink have agreed among themselves to help. You add the line about holding copper for a month. You fit the stipend note where it will not jostle anyone's memory. You phrase the coin for the father so it lands without sounding like generosity or rebuke, only like the right shape of coin in a right-sized hand. A small clearness arrives in your chest each time a sentence takes its seat. The boy returns to ask, with a kind of hopeful sleep already softening him at the edges, if the kitchen fires should remain. Let them rest, you say, not as an order, but as a mercy for clay and breath and wood. He nods and leaves, and the night feels briefly lighter for having set a labour down somewhere else. Outside, a boat touches the quay with its hull and then pulls away as if apologising. The Pharaohs lets its fire relax by a finger's width. You place a second temporary tie round the delta reply and line its edge with red that does not talk too much. The jars of ink sit in their shadows like good-natured sentries. The brazier waits for the seals, and your hands decide they are ready to begin the last, most material part of the work, the thing that marries the words to the travel they must make. Chapter 3. Seals, Symmetry, and Rest. You arrange the table the way a potter sets out his wheel. Nothing extra, everything to hand. Wax cakes sleep in their box. Clay pats, kept damp, hold themselves in a mouldable calm. The signet lies in its linen wrap, the oval grip a thought you have not yet thought. Your best two reeds rest to one side, their tips trimmed to different widths, one to carry a heading, one to carry the body of an idea. The ledger sits left, balanced as a bowl that has learned its own centre. You light a small spoon over the brazier and set a shingle of wax in it. The wax lolls and then loosens and then becomes liquid, a skin first, then a pooled eye waiting for the air to touch it back to firmness. You roll the first letter toward itself. The papyrus accepts the curve, finding its habit. A cord of flax winds round and crosses, and you drop the warm wax on that cross with a restraint that leaves it exactly enough. You take the signet from its linen. The coldness of the metal makes the skin at your thumb think about day. You press, hold, lift. Isis and the twin cobras blink up at you, crisp and small. The oval has the modesty of a task done well. You set the roll where air can cool the wax without insult. Clay asks for a different hand. You pinch a pat into a disc and press it where the cord meets itself, then offer the signet the firm, unhappy feel of grit and damp. The impression holds as if stone had learned memory, a letter that will ride a barge and a donkey, and perhaps another donkey besides, may prefer clay to wax. Clay keeps a mouth truthfully shut when dust wants to talk its way in. The clepsydra's drip is almost a touch against your wrists now. You sense it each time you reach for wax or for clay, and cannot decide where you felt it. Sound, water clock drip. You refresh a wick and the lamp's edge cleans itself. The flame returns to a patient egg. The brazier makes a small ridge of heat along your shins and vanishes when you shift your foot back a thumb's width. You let these sensations pass without comment in your head. The hand keeps its pace better when the mind does not run ahead to tell it what it is doing. Outside, the couriers are becoming part of the room's quiet. One leans his head against stone and will not wake with pain from it. One hums in his throat the way a jar hums when you rub its rim. They are ready to become swift the moment you ask. For now, they are another set of bodies that have agreed to be still while the queen sleeps. You place sealed rolls into shallow trays lined with linen, so the cords will not bite and the seals will not bruise one another. The ledger invites you to check what you already know you have done. You run a line of red under the totals, brackets as gentle as hands placed at a child's shoulder to show the way. When a figure stares up as if it has lost its home, you set down the pen and count it out with the shallow dish of small stones kept for that office alone. You let your fingers talk a language your eyes sometimes forget. The stones click and fall into their places, and you see where the oddness was and smooth it as you would smooth a wrinkle in a sheet. A scholar from the museum appears in the door as if he were a page you had left half read and now returned to. His cloak smells of chalk and a little of sheep. A packet from Mendez, he asks, voice barely air. You find it with your hand more quickly than with your eyes and pass it to him. He lifts his ring in a manner that manages to be gratitude without display and withdraws. You think of him moving through stacks of papyrus rolls that keep their breath better than most men do. You think of his sandals on the steps and imagine the sound, and then the sound you imagined occurs as if you had called it. Seals cool, ink dries, the lamps raise their small, steady heads. You hold the signet a little longer than necessary in your palm and then lay it back in linen, warmed now, not to make it yours but to remember that you are a link between metal and wax, between mouth and ear, between decision and boat. Your hands smell faintly of olive and charcoal and gum. The room smells of those and of nothing else that matters. The clay discs for the far road you string on linen thread and tuck under the cord with the practiced motion. Your hands have learned in nights like this one repeated until each becomes itself rather than the memory of another. The trays grow heavier. You lift one to judge. The weight is precisely the weight of what will leave you just at dawn and not require you to think of it again. You set the tray down and the table says yes with a soft, agreeable sound. The lattice allows a cooler seam of air. You narrow it with care. The harbour's breath grows a little. You know what that means. The first turn of morning somewhere far off, perhaps only in the minds of birds. Your own thinking does not change shape. It has learned the night's shape and will keep it a little while after the sun enters it and makes the edges brighter than they were. You return to the ledger not to add but to look. The columns align like geese on water when the wind is correct. A name that troubled you at the start of the hour now minds its place. You press your palm on the page as if to bless it, and then lift your hand with care the way you would lift a sleeping child's hair from its cheek so you don't wake the child. The braziers in other rooms must be sinking in their trays. Somewhere a coal falls on coal with the gentlest sound a falling thing can make. You wet a finger and draw it through a smear of red on the saucer's lip, and the colour moves to your skin and rests there as if content to be the sign it is and not what it was when it was powder and gum and water. You wash the finger in the basin, and the red loosens and goes away without quarrel. Another tray waits for letters to the museum quarter, requests for copies, acknowledgements of gifts of papyrus and ink, a gentle rebuke about a loan that has not come home. You bind that bundle as you bound the others, with sufficient cord and with a tag cut thin and ruled for rubric. Museum on the matter of copies. Museum on the return of a loan. Museum on thanks due. You place the tray nearer the door where the courier's eyes will find it naturally in the hour when the mind sometimes misses what the hand places in front of it. You think of transport the way a scribe thinks of a verb, not as a feat but as motion made true. Barges lean into Nile water, patient as cattle. Donkeys remember the road as if it were a story their mothers told them. They listen to it with their shoulders. Boatmen on the Eunostos know how to talk to rope with the knots that keep talk from loosening. Ptolemaic bronze and silver make their bright, private conversations in purses. Men spend them. Women spend them. The spendings become bread, then work, then rope, then wages again. You are not above any of this nor below it. The room teaches that lesson better than any philosopher. When you set the signet down for the last letter of this round, you feel a quiet arrival in the chest. It is not pride. It is a middle place between effort and acceptance where craft lives and where craft offers you a bed, if you are willing to lie down on it without asking for a different blanket. The clepsydra lets another measure pass, and you tip the bowl to reset the drop without glancing at it, the way you reach for your own breath without having to name it. The trays wait, the ceilings shine or hold a fine dryness. The ledger is closed loosely so the page can cool as the day will warm. The couriers arrange their belts and then relax again and then arrange them once more, practicing readiness like a musician running scales while thinking of nothing in particular. You set a reed in linen and a second reed beside it, and know the night has shaped itself to the point where closing begins. Chapter 4. Binding the Dawn. Closing is a craft of its own. You begin by gathering 3 rolls to a bundle so the hand will not fumble, cords tied to yield at the first clear demand and not before. Each bundle takes a tag, a thin strip of papyrus that carries the year and the destination, the subject in a few words that remember to breathe. Your script has settled, even its small curves look rested. You breathe a little life into the brazier with the bronze rod, and then let it quiet itself. It has done its portion. Lamps receive a last small mouth of oil and a pinch to their wicks. Smoke disappears into an obedience that is not a performance. The room leans into its own hush the way a garden leans into evening when the children have been called and the gate set back to its latch. Papyrus bins get their covers, linen pulled smooth so dust will have to find another pillow. The seal box shuts with its modest click. The signet returns to its drawer and closes over a little scent of metal. The air will forget in a few breaths. You wash your hands. The basin water takes ink and red and leaves olive, and a thin remembrance of myrrh from earlier, when the queen was in the doorway, and the doorway became sharper for a moment, and then, as it was. Cleopatra returns, quiet as the time between 2 drips in the clepsydra. She stands where the signet is, and you bow without tiredness. You set the sealed rolls before her as if presenting a field that has learned how to be watered. She presses the signet into wax and clay with a thumb that knows when to stop, allowing a beat for the impression to become itself before lifting. In that beat, you count the length of a breath and feel the room settle around the action like water round a stone that does not want to go anywhere. She looks up once, and the look carries a grain of thanks you will carry longer than is strictly necessary, and never weigh. Send these to the Eastern Quay first, she says, indicating one tray. The museum packet can go at the second hour. Her voice is not louder than it was, and never needs to be when the room is a room and not a mouth. She leaves. The eunuch becomes doorway again, then air. The couriers now stand as if instructed by the light alone. Belts find their holes, sandals meet their cords, hands touch the trays as if greeting animals they are about to guide. You give small directions that are more reminders than orders. This bundle to the quay, this through the museum gate, this on the Delta Road with the donkey at the sundial court. You do not speak the names of the men who will receive them. The couriers know those names the way they know where their feet will fall next. The harbour changes colour the way a thought changes from doubt to certainty, without anyone seeing the hinge. You open the lattice by another palm and let that colour in. The Pharos is less fire now and more stone that remembers fire. One gull carries the line of day over the water, drops it, catches it again. You draw the last red line beneath the totals in the ledger and seal the gesture with the breath that follows it. The reed rinses. Linen closes over it. It will sleep until night or until some day's sudden business takes it from its rest to make an emergency neat. The wax box nests with the clay. Weights go to their shelf. The potsherd that took your test strokes slides into its tray like a word back into a tongue. The steward appears to the edge of the doorway and flickers there with courtesy. Bread when the ovens speak, he offers. When they speak, you agree. And water when the sun comes far enough for it to taste of itself. He leaves, and his departure seems to make the doorway's shape easier to understand. You pause and let the room come into a single image, lamps not quite out. The brazier a red thought under ash, the trays lower by one, then two as the couriers pass, the ledger with its strap ready to close, the garden beyond paler by 1 degree, the rosemary needled, the myrtle steadied, the basin taking on a skin that will ask for a fingertip soon to write a circle in it and break the skin and make it again. One last time you touch the cedar. Grain meets fingerprint. Your body says thank you to the chair without words. You pass a cloth over the desk for no reason other than to let your hand tell the wood that the work is done. The lamps accept your pinch and surrender their flames with the faintest regret. A whisper like a child agreeing to sleep because the story was good and the ending kind. The brazier holds its warmth the way a stone holds sun into moonrise. It will be ash when someone with a broom arrives. You take the wool cloak from its peg and place it on your shoulders. The fabric's small scratch is proof that warmth can be true without softness. In the corridor, cool has the right to be present and is. The rooms along this spine of the palace begin to stir, a lid raised here, a laugh that forgets itself into quiet there, a door opened wide and then closed as if remembering someone asleep behind it. Your steps find their own patient pace again. Behind you, the scribal room will keep its air of work finished and not flaunted. The harbour will keep adding light to itself the way water adds water. The couriers will pass under arches that learned to be arches long ago. We'll find the quay. We'll find a bark. We'll find a road. We'll find a man under a fig tree who will hold the clay disc in his hand and then set it down and break it at the right time and take the letter and do whatever his office says he must do to be the sort of man who keeps his office. You reach the door to your sleeping place and find the handle colder than you expected. The room opens and receives you without asking questions. You set the cloak on a peg and yourself on the pallet, and your shoulder blades find the linen, and the linen finds them. The sound that has braided the night, the lamp's hush, the water's slow talk, the far surf keeps braiding, but the rope it makes is now one you intend to climb down rather than hold in place. You let your mouth close over a last breath that does not need speech, and you turn your face where the pillow wants it. The final chapter, the breath returns, morning lengthens without haste. The palace grows its colours back tile by tile. Courtyards show you how the day is built, from shade outward, from stone upward, from breath into speech. Somewhere a tray sets down and a seal meets a steward's knife, and the packet's throat opens and the words "you kept steady" leave you and become what they were meant to be in someone else's hands. You will not think of them again. They do not require thinking now. Behind your eyelids there is lamplight without flame, water that counts without numbers, sea that answers without question. The wool cloak loosens at your neck and passes a little retained warmth down your spine. Linen cools you where you meet it and refuses to argue. Your body finds the middle of the palette as water finds the middle of a bowl. Edges cease to matter. You hold one last image of the room you left. Cedar grain under fingers, papyrus sleeping under cloth, wax keeping its borrowed form, clay patient and sure, the ledger's red line binding the night to itself. Then even that settles and folds, not gone, only stored the way tools are stored under a clean cloth until hands return to them. The harbour's voice thins to a hum somewhere under thought. The clepsydra's drip narrows itself to a kindness without sound. The lamps, pinched at last, become the idea of flame, and then no idea at all. You do not follow them. You allow yourself to stay where you have arrived, where the room brought you.